let me just read a little tiny bit about Sean as we get started. I've known Sean for a long time. He first started surveying in 1989 using a wild T16 theodolite, which he still has and uses constantly. Um, he then went to UDOT. While working at UDOT, he realized how much he loved working outside and exploring the natural beauty of Utah. And this newfound passion led him to pursue education in survey drafting and geomatics. And he went to school at Utah Valley, Salt Lake Community College, and Utah Valley University. He completed his degree in 93 and was licensed in 94. Since then, he's gained valuable experience through several different surveying positions. Sean is especially involved in promoting the field of surveying through many local, state, and federal leadership roles, including being a professional land surveyor, staffing the Monument Replacement and Restoration Committee, and serving as the State of Utah Geodetic Advisor for the NGS. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you are our NGS advisor. He also manages the Utah VRS, the Turn GPS network, which is we're all very familiar with. Sean's honored to be serving as the current state chair-elect for the Utah Council of Land Surveyors and participating as a member of Utah Valley University's Surveying and Mapping Advisory Board, and looking forward to continuing to promote the valuable work of surveyors. So we have Sean on every year to talk about our network, and it's one of our favorite presentations. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, my friend.
There this year in person, but I wish I were there. I missed this conference. This is a good one for me to attend in person. So I'm gonna give it a go from home again, but I want it to be as informal as possible. So if there are questions that pop up, Troy, just cut me off and let's handle questions as they come up. So I always do an introduction slide. This is me right now. Normally I have pictures of elk hunting and deer hunting and that kind of thing, but this I had surgery last week and it was due to an ankle injury back in 2018. So my fun now lately, because I'm kind of gimping, is that I get into signs and I've acquired a few more. I think I showed you some last year, but that's kind of my big thing right now. And fly fishing, saltwater fly fishing for bonefish. That's been the fun. So excuses for my stuttering and whatever else I'm doing is I'm on pain meds and the anesthesia I'm sure did a number on me. And one of the strangest things also is that my tongue, the tip of my tongue, is still numb from that surgery last week. So anyway, we'll try to get through it. As Troy mentioned, I'm currently serving as the state chair for the UCLS. One of the big things that we're trying to take care of at the UCLS is the problem we have with the profession dying out. The average age of a surveyor in Utah is 53, and that's pretty old. So our focus has been building the profession for the future and encouraging young people to pursue the surveying career. A lot of that will be discussed at the conference that's going to be held February 8th through the 10th in St. George. So if you haven't signed up, sign up and get down there because there's going to be some good stuff down there. And as mentioned, I'm not your rep from the NGS, but I'm the state coordinator. And the state coordinator more or less is the go-between. Who currently is in that role, which is our regional advisor, is Linda Bell. And it used to be Bill Stone. But Linda Bell has been super good, super knowledgeable, and easy to get in touch with. So if you guys ever have any questions related to NGS or control, or you have a project, she is super helpful. So hit me up and I'll get you in touch with her. Many of you know that I currently work for the URGC. We're the state mapping department, and one of our responsibilities is the Utah Reference Network. And that's what I'm mainly going to be talking about, but I'm also going to give you an update on the PLSS web app. So many of you know that this legislation was put in place in 2005, and since then we've been building this network, and there have been a lot of changes along the way. And I'm going to show you some of the things that are going on right now. excuse me. Right now, we're probably at 108 stations for the Turn network, and then I believe another 14 for the Reno network. But I wanted to divide it out so you could kind of see where the stations reside. And there are 48 stations in the state of Utah. And most all of those stations are now going past just GPS only stations. We're becoming a full GNSS network. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But Nevada, and we've included the Las Vegas area in this picture here. We have 24 stations. That includes Reno and Nevada, Reno and Las Vegas, and then 20 stations in Idaho. And I'm just giving a quick blurb on who we've been working with there. The Idaho State University has really stepped up and pushed that coverage to extend clear up even into the Boise area. Wyoming, Dominion Energy, they've got some things, some infrastructure they manage. The Wind River Tribes has also asked us to extend out there. So I just wanted everybody to know, why we're extending out into these areas and who we're dealing with. And we're currently working with Ben Johnson from the BLM to extend the RTK services further into Wyoming. Looking at the future, some of the issues that we're seeing is we're increasing the number of customers to support, but we don't really want to increase the fees to cover the infrastructure and support needs. So one of our solutions is defining access areas by state. Right now, you pay $600 for an annual subscription that covers the entire footprint, but we are going to pull that back and start defining that $600 subscription by state in the future. That way, when we collect funds, they can properly be used where the customers are using the system, and it'll help us in defining those areas. So that's not happening next week, but eventually, as subscribers, their subscriptions expire, we'll be rolling those over. Again, I don't have a date on that, but that's the direction we're headed. So our biggest goal is providing the best solution possible out there. All along, we've been called Turn GPS, but I think we've now turned a corner where you could call us Turn GNSS. We're now providing solutions in GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, and even some QZSS. That's for the Turn part of it. Nevada GPS, we're not moving as fast. You can see we're still using GPS and GLONASS only. But there are a couple of receivers in that network that are putting out the other constellations. And if you do a single base from that receiver, you can utilize all those satellites. You guys have seen this slide, I think, every year. Partners, this is what it's all about. This is what's made us successful and what's made this project successful. Can't say enough about the partners. You guys are awesome. We hope that you'll all continue to support this effort because without you, it just wouldn't happen. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about GNSS and what makes GNSS different from just GPS. So we're looking right now at a snapshot of the Pivot RTK processing engine. You can see the number of satellites that are being tracked, processed, and solved. On the left-hand side there, you can see that some of those receivers are seeing or solving as many as 26 satellites. That's not the case with all of them, but when you start going across the board, you can see GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou is being solved. What I wanted to bring up is that the Beidou being solved here, and this is a picture of our current processor that's in production. There are not many that are solved on that right-hand side. There are only a few receivers that are solved, but it does make a huge difference when you're able to utilize that many satellites in a solution. I just took this snapshot this morning, and this is our cloud server that is not available to everyone, but we're going to talk about that. But you can see the number of Beidou satellites now available in the cloud server, and a much more solid solution when it comes to a full GNSS solution is coming from this cloud server. But there are a few reasons why it's not published yet, and we're going to talk about those. First off, what are the benefits of GNSS? Like this scenario right here is a scenario we commonly see with GPS-only solutions where you're seeing good sky. And when you see good sky, GPS works great. You can use just GPS satellites and get a great solution. But that's not always the case. Never fails, there's tree canopy, there are buildings, there's something around that causes problems. So blocking out just a few of these GPS-only solutions, it more or less kills our solution. So by introducing a full GNSS solution, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, we can actually utilize enough satellites in these scenarios where we can work tree canopy in between buildings and in deep valleys. That's the main benefit. As far as improving the accuracy of the solution, it really doesn't. You can get as good a solution with a GPS only solution if you've got open sky, and this is just from us doing some internal testing, as opposed to using a full constellation of all the satellites that are available. But the advantage is when you get into these scenarios, you can actually keep working because there are so many more satellites. This is our system, and you can see that we've got a lot of coverage, and you can see in the Wasatch Front area, the Salt Lake area, there's a lot of densification there. The reason we do that is for redundancy. We want to make sure that if a station goes down, that you're still able to work. And we're trying to densify these areas where we have the majority of our workers or our customers, and so that's our focus right now. One thing that we try to do and we pride ourselves on is keeping these stations up. It's not always possible. It's always not in our hands what's happening out there. And so you'll see some outages, but just know that you still usually have enough stations in an area that you can continue to work. Not really the case with the Nevada GPS network. We need to densify out there. You can see that the station spacing is spread apart, where if one of those stations goes down, you're dead in the water. And one of the issues is that it's a long ways from where I am, so it's difficult to get somebody out there sometimes. But again, we continue to work on that. And we've had some people step up that, some customers that work out there that have stepped up to help us keep those running. All right. I always usually throw in some video clip, and I've asked Troy to play this quick 40-second clip to lead into what I wanted to talk about. So, Troy, can you play that really quick?
Yeah.
Emma. Huh? Emma. 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 Emma.
Right on. Thanks, Troy. Appreciate that. So technology doesn't always work the way we want it. I thought that was a pretty good lead in that, there are a lot of moving parts to the GPS network, and we've been pretty successful keeping the lights on, but once in a while there are things that happen that are out of our control. And so it may be wise at times to have a backup plan. I know that you guys are under the gun with schedules and projects, but sometimes you may have to take an early lunch. But for the most part, we're out there trying. We're aware that these issues are popping up, and luckily we've been able to solve a few issues recently that I think will help. And I'll talk about those in a second. But just thought I'd bring that up, and it never fails to have a good video lead in on something like that. Okay, so iScope. We've used it so that we could get some insight on where the users are. But what I wanted to mention about iScope is you also have the ability to use iScope. If you have a login to the system, log into our website, and you can see on the left-hand side under My Account, there's a VRS iScope Live option. If you have multiple accounts or even one account, you can log in there and see yourself online as a user in the field. But you can also look at the activity from that that VRS subscription, using the VRS iScope just above it. And you can actually put in dates, and you can see how long somebody was online, and what was accomplished. So if that helps you for billing or any other reason, that option is out there and available. The only downside to that is if I lose connection to our database and then the system comes back online, I have to manually reboot the database for iScope to work, which is a pain in the butt. And sometimes I don't know that I've lost that, because it doesn't impact the system as a whole, but it does impact iScope. So if you're wanting that information, hit me up and I'll reboot the database, and we'll get you that information. But again, we're using that to determine where people are using the system. And we've gone through several scenarios where we can say, okay, we can see where the green circles are showing where all the stations are, and the red circles are showing the start of a GNSS session. We can now determine that most of the activity with turn is actually happening along the I-15 corridor and some out in the basin. So we look closer and zoom in, you can see there are a lot of things happening, and this is just a short segment of time that I actually pulled out of the database. So people are using the system, and it just helps us determine, like, when we have a new station on hand, where do we put it? Who's it going to help most? And that's what we've been trying to do. Last time I presented, we talked about upgrading our Trimble Pivot version to this cloud solution. And I believe I was ready to hit the button right after our last meeting, but we found that there were a lot of things that we hadn't looked into a little closer, and we started finding some issues and problems. So this is some of the issues and problems that we've been seeing. They started me off at the new data center using this load balancer. And the load balancer was kind of spoofing an IP address. And you know how the network is so IP driven. We need a static IP at each one of the receiver locations. I need a static IP at my server, and that's how we can make the connections. But because they were using this load balancer, it was spoofing it, and I couldn't make the connection, or I could establish the connection, but once the connection went away, it wouldn't reconnect automatically. And we couldn't figure that out for the longest time, and that's why I was hesitant to move forward with it. So luckily, security stepped up and they said, okay, your system will not work using the load balancer, and they've allowed us to just use a static IP, which has been helpful. But some of the other issues we're seeing with the new security protocols is the internal application port connections are being disabled without warning. And that's because we've always got new protocols that are coming online with security, and all of a sudden they have to go through and do a mass change on all the servers. And sometimes internally they'll turn something off on a firewall. So I'm a little hesitant to go forward with that cloud solution, not getting that stuff ironed out. And that's what the delay has been. And also a little red tape. It's been slow working with the IT departments to get the firewall rules modified so that the receivers are streaming two streams of data, one to the production server and one to the cloud server. But we're getting closer. But what I want you to know is that the cloud server solution is really awesome. I'm excited about it, and we're going to get there. It's just taking some time. So this is showing our full system, and you can see I've written important slide on this one, because if you do use the network and you want more information on how to start using this cloud server, then jot down this information here. So currently the term production server, and all of you probably have this IP memorized. Well, some of you do. The 168.179.231.9 through port 2101 is the Utah or the turn GPS. And then the same thing is the 168.179.231.11 port 2102 is the Reno. We're running version 4.3 of Pivot right now, which is not giving you a full GNSS solution on either one of those. You can see the top one, even the turn one, is only giving GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou 1 and 2. So you're missing out on the Beidou 3, which is huge. And also the Reno one, you're only getting GPS and GLONASS. But with the new system, we've set it up this is only the turn one, the Nevada GPS is not set up yet, but if you want to try it, you can. 165.239.144.5, and you've got 2 ports that are open to you if you have a current login. Port 2101 will push out your data in NAT83 2011. If you want a full WGS84 solution, you can use port 2102, and you'll get ITRF 2014, which is more or less the same as WGS84. So jot those down and use it if you would like. The coordinate frame or the coordinate base on all the stations is the same. I think I updated the coordinates on 2 stations that were kind of outliers. One is the Burrell Junction one that's sinking down near Cedar City. There was another station that looked a little bit funky, so I changed the coordinates on that. But feel free to use it. Your account should work unless you've just renewed in the last 2 weeks. What I did is I took a snapshot in time of the current database with all the users 2 weeks ago, and I updated the cloud server database with that. So if you have an account and you want to use it, go for it. If you have problems, let me know. But we're running Trimble Pivot version 4.7.2, and you should see all the satellite constellations that are available. There is a new version that was released at Trimble Dimensions a few weeks ago, or back in November. And in December, version 5.0.1 went live. I haven't upgraded to that yet. I'm going to wait and confirm the stability before we do that.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
Real quick question. When you use that new IP address, in the past, we've used, as far as formatting is concerned, the VRS CMR formatting, but the impression I get from this one is that we're either using RTCM or regular CMR. And is there a specific mount point that you would recommend that we would use once we got connected with that new IP?
Yes. I think I have a slide and just a few more that will explain that. So let me move forward with the slides, and I think it'll answer your question.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Things to do before we can go live with this system is I need to figure out the online bill pay system. As you all know, that's just been a nightmare, but I do have a contract with Utah Interactive, and they've now hired a developer to help me get through that. So we're working on it. Opus projects, I want to do a complete network adjustment. Currently, I did a network adjustment on the core of all the network station coordinates. But as we've expanded out, the way that I've added those is I'm doing 3 24-hour solutions on different days, and then I'm averaging those coordinates. And so it's worked out pretty good, but I would like to perform a full network adjustment so we can see what the differences are from our coordinates being used today on the production server to this new one. I don't know if that's going to happen before we go live, but it would be nice if that could happen. And then we need to confirm that the servers are going to be accessible and stable. There was a time about a month ago where I couldn't even get on my server. They'd actually blocked me off of the server, off of my own server. So I'm still working through security and trying to figure some things out. Then I need to work on connecting Nevada GPS to the cloud. I haven't done anything with that because we don't have a redundant license for Nevada GPS like we do Turn. It's been nice to have that second license so I could stand up a development server and get all the work done, but I don't have that for Nevada GPS. So either we're going to have to purchase that redundant license, or they're going to have to give me a demo license, and I'll just have to focus on it for about a month and try to get that one up and running. Okay. And Troy, I'll get to your question in just a minute, but this is a crucial part. Again, important slide. A lot of customers have seen some issues when I go out and replace an existing station with a new alloy station. And this is something that we were not aware of and has taken us months to figure out, but it was as simple as a couple of settings within the alloy. Under the receiver configuration, there's an option that's called tracking. And in tracking, you can set it up to, or you can enable certain signals to be tracked by that receiver. And then that receiver spits that information into Trimble Pivot. The problem with the new alloys is they came as a default with L1C turned on. L1C is the generation 3, the GPS generation 3 satellites. and that constellation's not fully enabled right now. I think I saw that they just launched the 6th one last week or something like that. So things are happening there, but by having that checkbox on, it was causing users to not be able to connect. In some instances, it wouldn't even let you start the survey, and it wouldn't let you initialize. So we've toggled that off on all our new alloys, and we shouldn't see that problem. So a few of the areas that I remember down in Hurricane and in St. George, that was happening. We had some people frustrated, and we could not figure out for the life of us why that was happening. The other problem we were seeing is the setting on L2E signal. It comes from the box as an option set up L2C or L2E. And this was just a handful of those alloys that were like that. But if it has or instead of and, it was excluding a lot of GPS satellites. And it took us a while to figure that one out, but we've made the modification on all the new alloys that are installed. So hopefully we're ahead of this, and you're seeing better results because of it. So. Or apologies though, it took us a while to figure that one out, and Trimble was good to help us with that, but it took them a long time as well. So, okay, this is going back to your question, Troy, that as far as the mount points go, if you want a full GNSS solution from the cloud server, you need to use RTCM 3.2, and that will enable you to get all the constellations. But I'm going to show you what those mount points look like. So right here is our production server, and you can see this is a list of all the mount points, and it goes on and on forever and ever. But we're kind of we're going to pull a few of those off and try to replace the single bases with the MS mount points. I know some people had some problems with that, so there may be some instances where we still need to create single base solutions off of a certain station because people are using them specifically for a project. But for right now, we're going to ask that they use the MS mount points, which will choose the closest station for you. This was the scenario before I thought about it. What I was worried about is having all those mount points together, NAT83 2011 and ITRF 2014 from the same location. People were going to make mistakes, and they were going to start surveying in NAT83 on their project, and the next time they're going to go in and they're just going to grab that GNSS VRS, and they may accidentally grab the ITRF 2014. We don't want that to happen because that's going to be about a 2.5 to 3 foot bust. So what we've done is I've put them on those two different ports, the 2101 and 2102. That'll make it easier so we don't have that problem. So this is what you're going to see from port 2101. You're going to get NAT83, and you're going to see all those options available. But again, if you want all the constellations, use the GNSS, VRS, NAT83, RTCM 3.2. That's the one you want to use. CMRX is not pushing out Beidou solutions yet. Okay, same thing for the ITRF 2014. Just know you've got to use the port 2102. And I don't know how many people are going to want to use that, but I thought I'd throw it out there because there are some people that like to survey in WGS 84. My recommendation is to stay with NAT83 2011 though.
Hey, Sean, I will just throw this out really quick. I don't know how many customers we have out there that have used the RTX satellite-based correction, which is in ITRF, but there is a automatic transformation, time-dependent transformation that's applied in Trimble Access. But if you had older equipment and you were using RTX, this is actually a pretty good option. You can use ITRF from the VRS now, and the RTX satellite. That should be apples and apples. So I think that's a pretty obscure case, but that would actually kind of bring a solution from the turn system that it would be the same as the RTX system.
Test it though, before
Okay.
moving forward.
Gotcha.
Because we've all been burned. So at this point, I'm kind of done talking about technical issues, Troy. So if people have questions about that, I'm just going to go into a little fluff now. So do people have questions about the VRS and I'd love to hear anything, questions or comments about it.
You have a chance to ask that.
I have a question, Sean.
Okay.
So I just noticed when you were showing those mount point names, both for NAT83 and ITRF, just now. So those mount point names, do you need, like, say I wanted to log on to the RTCM32 stream today, do I need that NAT83 in between VRS and RTCM? Because in the past, I believe the mount point was just like VRS RTCM32.
I mean, it depends on if your equipment requires that you hard code that in. If it requires that you actually key in GNSS, VRS, NAT83 dash, put in the dashes and everything, then yeah, you're going to have to put that in. But I think that a lot of the Trimble equipment will just let you select it, but it'll show up as you see it right there.
That's only on the new IP port, though.
That's only on the new IP port. Okay.
Isn't that correct? That those
Yeah,
mount
yeah.
points are relative to that new IP address.
Yeah,
You're
that
using the
165 address. Yeah.
So it's not
Small
like
companies.
it's not like what you're having to key in manually on these
I
has
was
changed.
I had someone having some issues with the Phantom 4 yesterday, and it sounds like that's not it because they were using it. I
Yeah,
was just curious if
Yeah.
that was a simple explanation.
that is a good question, though. If you're ever having to do that. Was there any other
Okay.
questions for Sean before we moved into the fluff portion?
Okay, I've only got a couple minutes, so I'm going to jam through this. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, buddy.
So just some interesting stats, types of uses: business, surveyor, engineer, city, county, utility companies, universities, federal departments. The Reno network has another 49 companies from Nevada, 6 from California, and 1 from New York. Turn has companies from 27 different states that use the network. Most common uses are surveying, construction, and mapping. Just some, useless stats, but I think people like to know that there are a lot of people and different uses that are happening out there. So I'm going to go through some uses that we've seen for the MRRC grants. People are using it to collect section corners. University of Utah using GNSS drones to deliver meds. Agriculture to navigate, to save fuel and fertilizer costs. And these are actually our customers that are telling us what they're using the system for. We're in the process of actually installing a station out on the causeway on the Great Salt Lake because they're monitoring water levels. There's so much publicity right now going on with the lake, and so it needs to be monitored quickly. And so we are going to install a station out there that'll be part of the solution.
Wow.
SurePath GNSS lawn mowers are using it to, this is an example of lawn that's being mowed inside of a racetrack just to make it look nice. Monson using the tiny robot surveyor. Autonomous GNSS solutions. This one's kind of cool. The GNSS sports field painting. This is a pretty common one. We're getting a lot more customers that are using our solution to paint sports fields. So Mike Hagan, who you all know, who's on our support team, has asked the USDA how they're using it, and they said they were collecting information from drones to identify infected areas in fields and identify where treatment and burning is needed for this potato wart that was going on. So kind of cool to see the different uses. Autonomous vehicle. I showed you guys some of that stuff last time. So on to the next. I'm going to take a real quick couple of minutes. The new release of the PLSS app, it was released just last week on January 19th. Has a totally new look to it. The app starts with the home menu, and you can decide whether you want to view or add data. The URL is plss.utah.gov. But the best way to get started is to log in and create yourself a quick account. So when you create an account, all you need is a name, email, and password. It'll then create a Utah ID account for you. And if you're a surveyor that's wanting to do work or have this system create you monument record sheets, you can add your seal in at this location. Quick find tools. If you look in the lower right-hand corner of the new app, you have some tools that allow you to zoom to locations to find section corners by its name, like section, township, and range, or also the BLM point ID. This is a really cool feature, as my location has the blue dot in the lower right-hand corner. Oh, the lower right-hand corner. Sorry, I really am. I got a lot of typos in here. If you select that option, it'll show you where you're at. It works well with using cell phones. If you wanted to go out and search for monuments, you can see where you are relative to all the BLM data. The legend just shows the county managed points, the monument records, the control, the calculated, and the MRC points. You can now add reference points. It used to be that you could only add monument record sheets, but you can actually now add reference points. So if you're in the field, you could use it as more or less a field book, which is kind of cool. The example I give here is I used it to find a point that was a bearing tree. It's not a section corner, but it does apply. So I now have a photo of that and a location of that bearing tree. When I add the point, it just shows up in my list of points that are available for looking at later. So once you collect a point or you submit a sheet, you can go to My Content and you can actually see all the submissions or the reference points that you've added. You can see here with my account, I've added 2 points. One's a bearing tree and one's just a point, and they're right next to each other. But it's kind of cool to have that. And when you log out and log back in, that information is still accessible. Okay. When you look at that list of all your preference points, you can actually see the photos and stuff if you use the More button. What we're talking about doing is adding coordinates for the preference points. So if you ever had to return to them, you would at least have, something close or in the neighborhood. It would only be a lat long from a cell phone, but it would get you in the neighborhood. Okay, and then this is the big part of what this is used for, and that's submitting monument record sheets. So you have 2 options. You can do, oh, this is showing all the ones that I have submitted, but what you can do is you can add in points. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. You can zoom to points. If you wanted to start adding in a monument record sheet, an easy way to do it is to zoom to a BLM point ID. It'll take you directly to that location. This one, for instance, is one in Duchesne County. You can see that this one is showing that Duchesne, they manage their own site, and it has a link there to their site. So if you wanted to see the latest and greatest from the county, you could catch that link here and go to their site. Or you could actually add a new sheet or an existing sheet. Uploading an existing sheet is just taking a PDF of something that's already been created and uploading it directly into the system. And then this is an example of a new sheet that's been generated by filling out all the information needed from the form. I just use the information off that same sheet, and this is our version of it. It does have a bug, though. I'm seeing that this is supposed to be in Beaver County when in fact it's in Duchesne County. So I need to go get that fixed. Anyway, I jammed through that super fast, but if you get a chance, go out and check it out, because I think it has some value, not only for people doing the work in the office on the desktop, but for a mobile use where you can use it to actually find corners, because a lot of the information on those corners has been put in place by the BLM using notes and other information to come up with a pretty close location. So if you're doing some recon on section corners, use it. It might get you in the neighborhood pretty quickly. So with that said, that's all I've got.
Hey, Sean, I did have a question that came in through the chat. Let's see if this makes sense to you. With the UGRC's HRO orthophotography program having ended in 2012, it seems like the current options are Google or Hexagon licensed imagery, both of which do not seem available to private companies. Is there any other option for subscribing to or purchasing ortho images for use by private firms outside of hiring flight consultants?
Oh, I wish I had a better answer for you. I know that discussion has come up a bunch, and at first the answer was no, there's just not. But I think UGRC is trying to come up with some options that will allow private firms to get access to that data. But I don't have the answers for you. If you could look up Rick Kelson from our site at gis.utah.gov, look up Rick Kelson, and and shoot him an email, and he'll have a better answer for you.
Well, thank you for answering that.